Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Business Strategy Roundtable. Today we've got Johnathan Schofield, Chief Partner Advocate at ChannelFalcon, joining us for a conversation about client relationships and holding that mental real estate with your clients. Before we dive into the strategy of today, we're going to go through John's entrepreneurial journey and his kind of path to where he is now. So I see a wry smile coming across your face. Do you have an exciting story or are you shy? It's good to see you and thanks for being here.
I mean, I don't know that I am shy.
I
I
know
also,
you're not shy.
for my part, I think parts of my story are exciting and others are just normal flesh and blood human life like everybody else lives, and it has its moments. But no, it's so great to be here, Zach. It's always a pleasure to connect with you and your audience and whatnot. And it's a Friday and it's cold in Greenville, but it's getting warmer in the future. Well, what's cold here? Well, it was 22 degrees this morning.
That's cold. Yeah, that's cold.
It's cold enough that we had to like drip the faucets. Kind of cold.
Yeah.
But I only brought up the weather because seasons are changing. Like, even though this is like the worst it gets here, and then and I'm looking forward to spring and change and growth and evolution. So very excited.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So you want to know the entrepreneurial journey of Johnathan? Well, the
Tell me where it started. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to interrupt like I just did there, and I'm going to take us down tangents on the pathway that stick out to me. And maybe they'll be useful and maybe they'll be run-of-the-mill everyday stuff like we all have. But you're an interesting dude, so I'm confident you're going to uncover some cool shit.
Well, the rabbit trails are encouraged for sure. I don't know how cool I am, but yeah.
You've got a lava lamp and a Wilson volleyball, so I know you're cool. Come on now.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, everything you see around me, by the way, is in some way connected to my entrepreneurial journey, whether it be family, tokens from past chapters in my career, events I've done, things that are just important or fascinating to me. But I like to showcase that I'm a real dude, like anybody else. But yeah, I guess so. 17 years old, I started in a call center, my first technology sales job, I suppose you could say. If making cold calls for Charter Cable counts, which is what I did back then through a third-party agency. So I was that guy calling you around 5:30, 6:30 p.m. while you were having dinner, trying to convince you that you needed to upgrade to the triple play bundle with phone, cable, and internet. And nobody liked me. It was a terrible job, but it turned out that I was pretty okay at it, and I made some money, which in southern rural Minnesota it was that or stock yogurts or work on a farm, which I've done all three of those jobs. And I made best money when I was on the phones. And so that's kind of how I put myself through college and grad school, was in call center jobs, usually in some kind of technology capacity. The first time I sold a DVR, I didn't even know what it was.
Wow.
That was the first domino in a series of dominoes. Go ahead.
How did that go? You were on some Wolf of Wall Street shit and just with the good vibes. This is the piece of technology that's going to
literally
revolutionize your TV watching experience.
So when companies like Charter, or now Spectrum, outsource calling campaigns to third parties, they give tremendous restrictions around what agents can and cannot say. So at the time I was 17 years old. I might have been even younger than that. I'm sitting in this little gray cubicle.
Yeah.
And the cubicles do not extend past the front of the desk. So there's a wall of telemarketers this way to my right and to my left. I've got like this old gross IBM screen in front of me and this cheap plastic headset. And I'd lean in because you couldn't hear because it was so loud in that strip mall office where I was making these calls.
Right.
And then there'd be this beep in my headset and this script would flash up on the screen. And there were portions of the script that we were required by our client, whether it be DirecTV, Dish Network, or Comcast. I mostly called for Charter, but you had to say certain sections word for word. Like, hey, this is Jonathan calling on behalf of Charter. This call may be recorded for calling for quality purposes, whatever, all that BS that you've probably heard a million times every time you've called a customer support line. When I was a teenager, I had to say that stuff. Then below that, there were portions of like the sales script that needed to be said. Others were bullet points that could be interwoven however you wanted, but you were kind of expected to at least mention these key points. And usually they were like features of whatever product or service you were selling, and then perhaps a corresponding benefit to that feature. So the first time I saw a DVR script, I was literally days old on the call floor.
Oh shit.
And I'd gotten very high level training in the crappy office in the back room on like, all right, here's the campaign, here's the script, here's what you do, here's what you don't do, here's your desk, here's your headset, wait for the beep, and then start talking. So yeah, I mean, I read the text.
Script was good enough to get it into the hoop.
Yeah, and then after your first couple, you just kind of like figure it out. And then people start asking you questions, and then you kind of feel like an idiot. Like they're asking you basic questions you should know if you knew what a DVR was. So it only takes a few like people laughing at certain answers you give them before you're like, oh, I think I understand what a DVR doesn't do now.
Yeah. Context clues with it.
Right.
You were saying that it was a miserable job from like the standpoint of its process, but you said that you were able to make it really, I don't want to say, I don't know how to say it, good living. You had success, you kicked ass, any of those options. How were you able to, I mean, some people have not a lot of success in call centers. So what about you led you to success in that space?
Well, if I could paint a picture for you, Fairmont, Minnesota, this
Ooh,
horrible
I'm
little.
cold already.
Yeah. Oh, man. So it's southern Minnesota. So it's more like Iowa than Minnesota.
Okay.
And the one strip mall in town that had basically a JCPenney, a Dunham Sports Goods, and a Radio Shack, which, would eventually go away. And then a few apparel places. And then there was this office building that was part of the strip mall, very small. But we crammed, I got to say, like 50 or more agents in this boiler room, so to speak. But the nature of the talent, let's just say, it wasn't hard to rise above. If you could read, I remember distinctly one day I was brought in to not train, but have like a candidate who was considering a job there sit next to me and listen to me take calls, right? And this is part of the interview process. It's like, so you're going to sit next to Johnathan, listen to him take calls, because this is basically going to be your life 8 hours a day once you take this job. And what part of the interview process was I would let them take a call on my behalf. There's one individual, and he's like looking at the screen, and I'm like, all right, so when this beeps, here's the words to say. And he's like, I don't know what that says.
Oh,
I said,
boy.
what do you mean? He's like, I don't really read so good. I was like, okay, that's kind of a significant part of this job. And that was kind of par for the course in terms of like the types of folks that would roll through this call center. So here I am. I wasn't like, I mean, I was an AB student, right? And would like to think reasonably intelligent, but what I did have in spades was the ability to communicate. So, and I got 50 cents commission on every conversion, right? It depended on the campaign, but like, and when you're getting paid $7.25 an hour, 50 cents, and you're going to do like, several hundred calls in a day, it's like, yeah, I can maybe make $20 in commission by the end of the day if I really hustle. And for a, 16, 17-year-old kid, that wasn't nothing. So I learned really quick as I listened to those around me. Those who were successful had an innate ability to fall into conversation with the prospect instantly. And that is where I learned, which is, I don't know whether you intended for this or not, like honestly, that's where the seeds planted for me, this idea of mental real estate. We've all gotten that call from AI or from someone who barely speaks your language that's reading through a script where you struggle to connect with the caller, and it's an immediate turn off, and you just like, I want nothing to do with this conversation. But if you flip the script and you're like, no, you're going to be the one doing that. You're going to be the one making those calls. And by the way, you're going to sit here 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. You might as well figure out how to be good at it. So I identified if I could build what I call an emotional bridge within the first 15 to 30 seconds of a conversation with the prospect, they'd let me say whatever the heck I wanted. And they would be glad that I did. Even those customers that were upset or irate or pissed off at Charter, which there was no shortage of them, I discovered that there was a way to de-escalate an irate prospect and have an amazing human conversation with that person, that by the end of that call, I may not have gotten a sale, but I probably got a thank you for my call.
Well, what was that? What's the de-escalation technique? You got me on the edge of my seat.
Well, rule number one I discovered was never apologize. And that might be surprising to hear, but and I'm not wanting you to hear, don't ever apologize if it's not warranted. If you did screw up, if you dropped the ball somehow, some way, it is your fault. Sure, you absolutely should apologize. But just know when you do apologize, you're shifting the balance of power dynamic in that conversation immediately. And you're putting yourself in a subservient to the prospect relationship. Now, sometimes they had legitimate reasons to be upset, especially with the cable company, right? But I don't actually work for the cable company. I work for MarketLink Incorporated. And whatever their experience was with Charter is not my fault. And even if it was the company's fault that I worked for, it wasn't Johnathan's fault. So how do you de-escalate someone who's upset, pissed off without apologizing? Well, the first thing you have to do is you positively acknowledge their situation. Be like, I cannot tell you how many times Charter like screwed up my billing and support was horrible and just like my channels never worked. Those types of things you might hear from a prospect. Like, hey, I appreciate how frustrating that experience must have been. And I understand why you're upset. It's like, I didn't say sorry because I'm not. Frankly, I mean, I don't know you and I don't know if your experience is legitimate or not, but I know that how you feel right now to you is real and I can empathize with that. Right. So you first acknowledge it. All of a sudden, you kind of popped a hole in the tension and it starts to release a little bit. They're like, oh, okay, well, this guy seems, it's not his fault. He's not the one who like installed the fiber wrong. He's just a guy in a call center somewhere. And all of a sudden, so this first is you positively acknowledge the situation. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to, I use the feel, felt, found method, which a lot of people are familiar with. You use this for overcoming objections, but you can also use it for de-escalation. Like, hey, I understand why you feel that way. That must be totally frustrating that you had this experience. A lot of other customers that I've worked with in the past have felt the same way. I understand why you feel. Others have felt the same way. What they found is after working with me, on the other side of working with me, the status quo has changed. The problem is solved. You live happily ever after. Let me pass you over to our closing team so they can get you that DVR.
There you go. Okay. So you had a couple of tools in your tool belt. You listened to the people around you. It sounds like maybe you did some independent research or had some communication skills that came stock. You did this call center sales through college and maybe a little bit after. And where does the journey go from there?
So on the other side of grad school is where I first stepped my toe into the B2B software space. So obviously cable is consumer products, which turns out is way harder than B2B. When I first stepped into my first business like sales job and I made a cold call to like a business leader, they were like very cordial, incredibly professional, and would have a conversation with me without, being vindictive or bitter or, a jerk. That does not mean that calling business professionals, you won't have those assholes, because they absolutely do exist. And some of you listening know who you are.
Good Lord.
I say that with a lot of heart and respect, because like I get cold calls that irritate me as well, but I've learned to have an appreciation for who's on the other end of the phone, and to what extent they have control over the situation. Like, remember when my call center days, when I started, there were literally phrases I had to say word for word, or I would get written up. I had literally all of my calls recorded. And if I did not get a hard no from the prospect 3 times, and by the way, a hard no was up to the discretion of my manager, I could get written up, And this was back when I was an entry level, on the floor, in the trenches, making calls kind of jockey, right? But when I got into the B2B space, things changed dramatically. I started over the next 4 years understanding technology and its impact on business, and what these entrepreneurs who've built their own ventures have to deal with, and where technology intersects with hopes and dreams and visions and goals. And it all became very exciting. No longer was I just like selling HBO subscription, so some fat ass could sit on their couch and eat donuts and rot away. Now I was like helping provide meaningful technology solutions that had a direct impact on people's futures, retirement, the economy, their ability to employ others and grow their businesses. And that just became like really interesting.
It was easier to sell, I bet.
It's absolutely easier to sell something that you believe in. That is absolutely true.
And where the value is apparent, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you one more story about my days in the call center, because it's very relevant to this idea of believing in the products you sell. I remember it vividly. My manager's literally standing over my shoulder, listening to me take calls, and there's this beep in my ear. And by the way, remember, I'm in southern Minnesota, so I know I live in Greenville now, but I had very little exposure to the Southeast at that time in my life. So this sweet southern lady picks up the phone, and I start going through my script. And all I was trying to do was upgrade her package for $5 more per month to the digital box. So we would send her a digital box so she could get digital cable instead of analog cable. And this was back when, the mandated analog to digital transformation thing. So Charter, of course, was capitalizing on that to upsell all their customers. So I'm going through my script, and she stops me in this sweet southern voice, like an old southern voice, I presume. And she says, I don't have any interest or use for digital cable. She says, technically, I am legally blind. I said, okay. And I'm thinking, my boss is standing behind me. She was super sweet about it. She didn't actually say no. So it didn't even count as one of my 3 no's. But I'm obligated by the scope of my job to continue and try and sell this digital upgrade to this legally blind woman. I'm like, okay, what do I do? So I thought on my feet, and I thought I heard kids in the background. I thought. And I presumed from our conversation and all that she was oversharing, is a very southern tradition. To talk
yeah.
to strangers.
I got a little of that in me.
We all have a little southern woman on the front porch.
So she's oversharing.
So I said, well, can I ask you a question? She said, yes. I said, do you have any grandchildren? I don't know if it's politically correct to ask that question anymore, but back then it wasn't a big deal. I was like, do you have any grandchildren? She said, oh yeah, of course I do. I said, are they over very often? She says, all the time. I said, well, when they're over, do they watch TV very often? She's like, oh, the box is never off, she says. I said, well, hey, I appreciate how this digital upgrade may not have a direct impact for yourself. However, your grandchildren will very much appreciate the higher quality in picture and the better sound and the more reliable connection, or whatever. I don't even remember what the features and benefits were. It was something like that. She said, you know what? I think you're really right. And so I ended up selling digital cable to a legally blind woman. That's a sentence I can say, and it's absolutely true.
It sounds like you did it right. You know what I mean? Like as far as sales goes, you should be looking for pain or opportunity and presenting value and a solution to it. You
You
didn't
know,
hammer away on, well, you can listen to it. It's a better sound. You didn't lie to her. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
I didn't lie. You're right. I didn't lie, but I'll be honest. I don't think I did anything wrong in that scenario, but I do remember a distinct
Yeah.
feeling after I transferred her to the closing team of like, did she really need what I sold her? Would it
Yeah.
really be of value to her like I said it was? And the answer I had to give myself was probably she'd have been fine without it, to be
Yeah.
completely frank. You know, her grandchildren probably do not really care about audio quality and picture quality to the extent that they want grandma to spend $5 a month more for it. The true impact was slim to none. Now the cost was slim to none as well. Um, but I do remember that distinct feeling of like, I don't think I have confidence in what I just sold. And it was not a good feeling.
Yeah.
Contrast that with some of the sales experiences I've been privileged to have in the latter parts of my career, where I've been able to help businesses save thousands of dollars. I've been able to help them, decrease operational friction. I've been able to help them increase revenue through the tools that I've been able to help sell, and through some of the systems I've been able to help them build out for revenue and for sales and go to market and all these things. And when you see a customer win on that side of the equation, you get an intense pride that comes with that. And yeah, I mean, I'm coin operated in the sense that everybody likes to make money and everybody likes to win. If you're in sales, it's kind of a red flag if you don't get excited about closing business. But it's more than business closing, it's business outcomes. Whereas the outcomes for that grandmother upgrading her digital cable
Right.
were small at best. And the reality is, Charter probably jacked up her price at the end of her 12-month agreement to $15 a month. And
Mm.
I know this because I talked to these customers all the time. This is the way that the company operated back then.
Yeah.
Contrast that feeling to positive business outcomes that you can feel confident in. Selling is a completely different game at that point.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you started to have that feeling, that experience as you were moving more into a space of selling stuff you liked. How did we get to entrepreneurship?
This little thing called the apocalypse of 2020 opened up.
Okay.
I've always kind of had an entrepreneurial bug in my DNA since I was young. I've always enjoyed, bringing people together under a common cause. Even in school, I was like organizing groups of my friends to do this or that or whatnot. And I didn't even realize it at the time, but there was a little entrepreneur starting to develop. But to take the plunge, I don't know that I ever would have made the risk without getting pushed out of the nest. And what
Sure.
happened was 2020, I was the business development manager for a software company. And, COVID hit them really hard, like it hit so many. And they made the difficult decision to let me and my entire team go, and a
Mm.
lot of folks. And so I was in the middle of the pandemic looking for work, and I had the genius idea. Well, for the first time in my life, I really have nothing to lose, and there's low risk for starting a business. So I did. And the rationale behind it was,
Yeah.
man, if I've helped these businesses I've worked for over the course of my career find sales opportunities, why can't I do that for myself? Why can't I find my own sales opportunities?
Great point.
And hey, wait, why can't that perhaps be the marketable skill that I bring to bear for my customers, help them grow? Um, and so that was the first domino in a series of dominoes that would bring me to where I am now. Um,
Similar situation over here. A series of
yes.
dominoes.
Oh, yeah,
Ah,
no, that's good. That's really good. Now you
no.
have to like explain that for the people that are watching that don't know that about you.
I used to own a handful of dominoes, and I also used to operate within the corporation in a number of different locations. So all sorts of dominoes brought me here.
So he's speaking of dominoes literally in the franchise sense.
Yeah, which is funny because it's not the literal domino. We're all over there. Who knows what we're talking about?
Who knows? Who knows?
So you took that jump into entrepreneurship and you felt like it was low risk and because you had already had a moment that I liked how you said it pushed you out of the nest. I think that's good
Yeah.
imagery.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you figured out an entrepreneurial like parachute or did you kind of how was that learning to fly out of the nest? Did you hit the ground and have to get up and like shake some stuff off? And how, you know what I mean? How did you go? How'd you
So
put this thing in the sky?
it was, I mean, it was absolutely rough at first. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember at one point in 2020, I was driving my little 10-foot trailer around Greenville looking for furniture on the side of the road that I could resell on Facebook Marketplace just to make sure that I could, pay some bills by the end of the month. It was really lean. And, I worked hard whenever I had the opportunity to make a little bit of cash. It didn't really matter what it was. I was working my ass off just to make ends meet. But the way, so like, and now I consider that part of that entrepreneurial journey because it was a question of survival at that point. You just do what you had to do to function. But as far as like the vision for the business and getting it from the ground to the sky, as you kind of alluded to, the way the idea even came about was as soon as I was given notice at my former job, literally the very next day, I polished up my resume. I got myself a free HubSpot account.
Yeah.
Okay. I went to Google Maps, and I searched technology companies in Greenville, South Carolina. Okay.
Yeah.
I scraped all of the top 10 I can't remember how many I put in this list. It was a lot. If they looked like a plausible fit for my skills, I put the company name and the website in this spreadsheet. And then I used a combination of free tools that had like free credits per day or per month where I could go to LinkedIn and scrape emails 5 at a time, phone numbers 5 at a time. I would scour the websites looking for contact information for who I thought would be the hiring manager for those particular companies here in town.
Mm-hmm.
And then what did I do? I loaded them into HubSpot and I created an email template that had all of the reasons they should think about hiring me, my cover letter and resume. And then I called through that list and most of the time I got a voice message, and this was the voice message I would leave Zach. Be like, hey, so this is Johnathan. You don't know me. I live in Greenville just like you do. You're not expecting this call, and I understand you're probably not hiring because it's the middle of the apocalypse. However, I was on your website today, and based on what I understand of XYZ company, I think I would be a tremendous addition to your team if I do say so myself. I'm going to send you an email, so you don't have to just take my word for it. It's going to have all of the reasons why I think you should talk to me again. Please look it over, and if it's worth your time, I'd love a callback. Here's my callback number. Then the email template would say something to the effect of, hey, this is Johnathan. I just left you a goofy voice message. Here's all the things I promised I would send you and the reasons I think you should talk to me next. So I'm not kidding you, Zach. Doing that, before I started my own business, I secured for myself no less than 30 phone interviews with companies over the course of 40 days. You might be, oh, well, that's impressive.
A lot.
It was a lot. It was highly effective, but
especially in the industry, because when they're not hiring and when their strength sometimes isn't hiring traditionally, it's not like they're stacking their calendars with phone interviews. So it is statistically significant.
Well, here's the challenge with it that I had is I got all these phone interviews and not a single person gave me a job offer. I did get some incredible feedback from people. They were like, man, we love you, Johnathan. I literally had one person say, it's not a question of if I hire you, it's a question of when I hire you. Shout out to JP, because he ultimately would go on to do that. later. But in the meantime, that was pretty universal feedback from these people. Is like, well, until the economy settles and we don't know what's going on with COVID, we're on a hiring freeze. We really like your energy though, so let's stay connected. I had several people say similar things to that. I was like, well, that doesn't help me. Thank you for the positive reinforcement, but I need to eat. But what I did walk away with was, man, I have a particular skill set that gets me to the table for a conversation, which I've always had over my career. This was why I was always successful on the phones. And that's where the light bulb went off in my head. It was like, well, this is maybe something that I should think. Maybe I'm limiting myself by thinking that I need someone else's permission or payroll to go be valuable. So I just did it. I just started it. But it was a grind, to your point, like to getting from the ground to the sky. My first client of significance, I ended up landing over the summer of 2020. And it was a bad contract that I took. And I took it because I needed to eat. I made some concessions that I learned the hard way I would never make again. But it was important for me as an entrepreneur to learn those tough lessons with a bad contract. And the customer was a good man trying to do good things. We just both made some bad decisions and it led to it not working out. I ultimately would fire that client, but then I would bring on my kind of flagship client for a long time, who I'm still working with today. And that was my introduction into the channel, the MSP channel. And he's a cybersecurity product called Tech ID Manager. And, he had this really amazing product for MSPs and he needed help getting it in front of more MSPs. And he asked if I could do it. And I said, what's an MSP? So shout out Martin. Love you, man. And he's doing great things. And I'm proud to be part of that journey a little bit still. But anyways, after that, getting it into the sky was just a question of making more and more of those meaningful client relationships. I eventually would take a couple W-2s over the coming years in the IT services channel, and Dark Horse became kind of a side hustle for a time. And then it was about 24 months ago when me and corporate America broke up for good. And I went all in on myself, and I've not looked back.
How has that felt? Do you feel free or do you feel burdened by what entrepreneurship takes?
There is a freedom that comes with it. Absolutely. And any business owner watching today, I think resonates with that. There's an autonomy you get working for yourself. There's a agility that comes working for yourself that you don't have with the shackles of corporate America. Even working for someone else's small business has its pros and cons. Though it can feel entrepreneurial, it's not the same. But don't make any mistake. I work harder and longer days than I ever did working for somebody else, working for myself.
Yeah.
Now I don't anticipate it will evolve and level off and change as the organization gets to a place where it can function less with me. I should say function more without me. Right now, my fingers are in too many pies, and it's a common entrepreneurial problem.
Yeah.
But we're figuring it out, and there's an excitement and an anxiety that comes with that. It's like that's the risk side of it. But it's absolutely worth that autonomy and that independence. 100%.
Agree. Well, thank you for sharing your journey with us and giving us some perspective on your journey, B, what a journey could look like, and then C, why you're such an expert or somebody that people would want to listen to as it relates to mental real estate with clients. And then we'll transition over into our strategy conversation of the day, even though we've kind of touched on some elements of it already. Even as it relates to your journey in 2020, everything, it sounds like, about your career into entrepreneurial journey has been about like you said, that mental real estate, or finding a way to connect with who you genuinely are with who they genuinely are. And whether it be making those connections with the IT service businesses and trying to identify a job that later parlayed into a job, or how can I get this 50-cent sale in your commissioned hourly job, that from the beginning. It's been about, how can I show these people the true value of this and make a true connection with them and their needs. And I think that it's really freaking interesting, man. And I can't wait to hear some of your more direct recommendations on staying top of mind with clients. Before you give specific recommendations, what is staying top of mind with clients and why is it important?
So that phrase, staying top of mind, it's a common,
Or having mental
commonly.
real estate,
I mean, yeah, but
all
like
the different.
it does, like it illustrates the same idea that
Mhm.
I articulate as mental real estate.
Right.
At the core of business and commerce, in really anything in the professional world, at the center of it all are flesh and blood human beings. And I don't care how automated this world becomes, right? There's always going to be, behind the curtains at least, some body that's dealing with pain and pursuing opportunity,
Mhm.
right? That is just a core reality of the human condition. Life hurts sometimes, and there's opportunities for that hurt to be less sometimes. This is why businesses exist, right? To solve complex problems or simple problems, or to capitalize on opportunity so that humans can live their lives. And a lot of times, especially in corporate America, where it all becomes numbers on a spreadsheet and bits and bytes in a server somewhere,
Mhm.
we can easily lose sight of that. And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
whether it's your employees, your business partners, your channel partners, your customers, their employees, you start looking at people as less than human, as things to display on a chart. And they wonder why salespeople struggle, and they wonder why entrepreneurs fail to win new business. It's because they've lost sight of that idea of authentic, physical, human connection that was always at the cornerstone of successful business.
Right.
So the tactical was that's my answer to like the definition of what it is. Like mental real estate is authentic, physical, human connection in such a way that relationship has been built and a bridge exists between this person and that person. So when I think about this problem or opportunity, I instantly associate that connection as a possible solution. As this is where sales happens, right
Yeah.
here. So that's my answer to that question.
Can I parlay something from like Operations Domino's Pizza World that's kind of sticking out to me about this? I'm gonna just freaking do it. I'm gonna not ask for
Do
permission.
it.
I'm gonna. So somebody said to me once, I think it's been said a couple of times, but you don't work for the company, you work for the person. And if you ask somebody like, "Hey, who do you work for?" Typically they'll go into detail about their boss, or their team more quickly or more readily than they'll say like Domino's.
Right.
The especially if you're talking to people that have some kind of familiarity with you. And what I'm connecting between the two thoughts is this idea that if you make a personal relationship, you're going to have better results, whether it be business to business
Mm.
or business to employee. If you're able to make that genuine connection,
Mm-hmm.
then the way they think about, and you said equating like a business or a solution to you, right? Equating your job to your boss. If you like your boss or if you like your team, you go to work, you equate going to work with the people that are around you that you enjoy to be around. When
Mm.
you have to deal with, sales building solutions, and they think about, well, what do I have to do? And they think about, oh, like these are the people in my world, like John, who help with sales building solutions. That's that bridge. And if,
Mm.
to your point, and I'm just connecting the people and employee side of it based on my experience to the point that you just made, that mental real estate is what makes the difference between a firm relationship and something that can easily change. I got to go get a new job. I don't want to work for this company anymore. Well, I don't want to work for the company, but I like working for John. I like working for Zach. You know what I mean? And that is stickier.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. You're absolutely right, Zach. Like, I mean, it's bigger than just sales. I spend a majority of my time on top of funnel business development, channel development, and closing deals. It's like where my, experience has been in the market. But when it comes to running successful businesses, it's as equally important to retain mental real estate and to nurture mental real estate as it is to earn it. Now, in my experience, folks who, once they have a good customer, are genuinely, like if they're like a service provider, for example, pretty well equipped to nurture and retain mental real estate. But it is the winning of the mental real estate that is orders of magnitude more difficult when there is zero and you need to go from zero to one mental real estate. That is like the hardest part. But once you have one, to go from 1 to 10 mental real estate and maintain that 10, now you have a client that will stay with you forever. But without investing in your people, in your operations, in your processes, policies, and procedures, and holding yourselves accountable to delivering value to your customer, that 10 can degrade over time. And all of a sudden, mental real estate begins to sour, or worse, it starts to be lost altogether. So when I hear a service provider say, I never hear from my customers, I love this client, they're the best. It's red flags to me. Like, that's an indication that there could be systemic existential problems you don't know about,
Yeah.
So it's equally important to retain and to nurture that mental real estate as it is to accrue it.
How do we go from 0 to 1? What are some of the strategies? How do we get that level 1 mental real estate?
Well, where thy prospect is, there thou shalt also be. So that includes their voicemail inbox, their email inbox. It includes their LinkedIn feed. It includes their physical office, if you can. It includes the professional associations that they're a part of. It includes their local communities where they are active. It includes the causes that they're passionate about. You really just need to demonstrate you have an obsessive desire to occupy that mental real estate to an extent that you will not be denied. But there is a finesse to doing so without becoming like obnoxious. So there's a fine art there. But at the end of the day, where most people fail is just being there.
You ever play The Sims?
I have played a little bit of The Sims,
Play a
yes.
little bit. You know how it's like you can kind of go up with the conversation, up with the relationship, and this might be in the newer game, or you roll up, you make a bad joke, off color, you get a couple of down points. I've done a few of those in my day.
Yes.
It's a little bit like that with the establishing mental real estate. And they say first impressions are important. And if somebody's got no real estate for you in their mind, and you roll up, and the first thing you do is like fumble everything and make an ass of yourself, you limit immediately the amount of options you have for proper communication and moving forward, because you have to get it right once you've not gotten it right.
Yes, that's true. However, anybody listening to this or watching this later, like, don't let that deter you or freak you out. There's a common phrase that you don't get a second chance at a first impression. And as true as that may be, Sometimes the best thing to happen to a relationship is for something to go wrong. And if it happens right out of the gate, whether you realize it or not, you've just been handed a golden opportunity to shine above absolutely everybody else that's begging for your prospect's mental real estate. Let's say you say the wrong thing. Let's say you happen to have some kind of reaction that you lost control, or they lost control, or you called them at a bad time, or you dropped the ball somehow, some way. And now there's damage in the relationship. Well, first of all, before this moment, because we're going from 0 to 1, there has been no relationships. You're like, oh man, I've lost all hope. No, this is the opportunity to reframe. Be like, hey, can I be honest with you? I feel like I've done you a disservice just now. And I would, and though I don't maybe deserve a second chance, is it okay if we restart? Or, there's a million different ways you can reframe. But you know what that doesn't sound like? It doesn't sound like every other marketing, business development, ad engine that's begging for their arrogantly assuming their mental real estate is owed to the person who's seeking to earn it. Now you're coming from a place of humility that I am vulnerable, I am human, I am just like you, and I make mistakes too. And all of a sudden, even though we know nothing about each other, we know something that is incredibly universal and that we both can instantly latch onto. So if the smart business developer will capitalize on those screw ups and actually use them as a tool.
Tremendously well said. That's a fantastic point. That's a fantastic point. I'm going to freaking change the way I play Sims now too.
Good luck. I've always been more like a Civilization guy. Civ
I play
3.
a little Civ. If they could get some Sims elements into Civ, I'd really be
We'd never see you
time.
again, Zach.
Yeah, right. Okay. So we've got about 10 minutes left here. I want to make sure to give you a chance to talk a little bit about how people can get a hold of you, that type of thing. We talked about entry points to getting that mental real estate. What does and doesn't work in sales, and what does and doesn't work in post sales? Because I think those are both points where you either need to grab or hold mental real estate.
So authentic physical human connection. Authentic physical human connection. When I hear you ask that question, what I'm assuming you're kind of what I'm assuming you're kind of referring to are like the tactics a sales professional might use. And the tactics are ad nauseum. There's a million different ways you can seek to communicate and engage and connect. There's no shortage, today's day and age especially, there's no shortage of channels by which you can ask for or attempt to earn mental real estate. The critical thing is to filter every choice you make through that screen of authentic, physical, human connection. I'll give you an example. If you dare, and many do, if you dare come into my LinkedIn DMs with some AI generated BS that's begging me to get time on the calendar with you, there's a high probability that you are just adding to the echo chamber. That the LinkedIn DM is a channel by which you can seek mental real estate. I'm going to shout out my boy, John Newt, who reached out to me on LinkedIn, and he reached out to me, and all he did was recorded like a 30-second voice clip. That was all he sent. No, I never met this guy before. Had no idea who he was. Pops into my DM, this little clip of a sound recording. I saw that it was short. I was like, what the hell? I'm going to see what this is all about. And in that voice message, he demonstrated he had been on my website. He'd looked at my LinkedIn profile. He appreciated some of the content he had seen. And he demonstrated that we have like mutual interest in collaborating and overlap in our markets. And so John's been a guest on my live stream, and we're exploring ways to collaborate. And that is an example of how he's the same channel that every AI chatbot out there is flooding people's inboxes with and getting no results. And he took, probably less than 45 seconds to do basic research, record a clip, and hit send. And now he and I are working together.
Nice.
But it was authentic, it was human, it was physical.
Yeah. So what are some ways you can really, other than voice memos, which is a really good one, and I guess you could do some video stuff too, that you can hit that physical while in a primarily remote or work from home environment?
That's a challenge, right? Because physical proximity is the fastest path to doing so, right? If I can shake your hand, you can smell my breath, I can buy you a drink. I will ensure that in that moment you will not forget me, and we will now be connected
If
for
you try to
better or
make me
for worse.
smell your breath while buying me a drink, I'm sure I won't forget you.
You won't forget me, Zach. You won't. But that's hard to do. You can't go to 5 networking events a week. Some people, you can't go to 5 a month, right? You can only take a handful of people out for drinks or coffee or dinner or lunch or whatever throughout your week or day. So when it comes to outbound, how can you facilitate authentic physical human connection at scale? Well, I'm old school, man. There's a reason there's a phone behind me, right?
You talking about that banana?
The rotary phone. It's
Yeah,
in
I see
front
it.
of
It's by the lava
it's
lamp.
in front of the lava lamp. Maybe I need to move it.
You should,
Um,
because the light shines against the brass and it's hard to tell, and it's too cool of a phone to
it needs to
not
get its
be
own place.
highlighted. Yeah.
Maybe I'll move the chessboard up and put the phone down in that square.
I like the chess. Yeah, the chessboard will since it's kind of flatter, will give
Mm,
plenty of space for the lava lamp without. I think that's probably a good call. Yup, I see you. I see you with the organizational strategies.
I just make it up,
What did I?
man.
So you were talking about the phone. You were talking about the
I
phone, and
mean,
then I made a bunch of dumb jokes.
a lot of people are afraid of the phone. They feel like it's
Yeah.
dead. They feel like it doesn't work. And here's the reality of it: like it is harder than it has been because everyone loves technology. Actually, technology is the reason phone is harder than it's been ever before. But it's still, when you get a connection, is an opportunity for you to be authentic because it's real time. It's real time. It's happening in. It gives you the illusion of physical proximity because it's happening intimately in the moment. And it is a physical manifestation of you. Your voice is an incredible representation of who you are and connects physically as they hear it. That's different than even your picture in your signature in an email or even a video of you on LinkedIn. This is maybe a close second. What you lose in video is immediacy and proximity,
And
right?
relevance,
And
because
relevance.
when you're talking to somebody, it's like this person is saying these words to me, and I'm
That's right.
experiencing them.
So there's a lot of hurdles to overcome to earn that connection. But once you have that connection, you are now able to be authentic, to be physical, to be human, and then to nurture that connection and take the conversation where you want or need it to go. So, and I can make hundreds of calls a day. I can make thousands of calls a week, whereas I can only take a handful of people to coffee a week. I can talk to literally hundreds of people in a week. So it scales. But it isn't easy. And I know there's some anxiety for people who are like, oh, I could never do a cold call. Well, talk to me. You probably could. It's not as hard as you make it out to be in your head. It's just disciplining yourself to do it. And if you're a flesh and blood human and has talked to another one before, you can do this. But there's other ways too. That's just one.
Can I give a recommendation for people that don't like doing cold calls or their elevator pitch?
Of course.
Even though, so if you can say your cold call script or your elevator pitch in the mirror, looking at your own eyes, you will be able to say it to another human being, because there is not a more unsettling or uncomfortable experience than talking directly to yourself. So if you can get through, because while you're communicating into the mirror, you're seeing what's uncomfortable about how your delivery is. There's not
Right.
escaping it, and it's real time. It's not even like, I shoot the video and then I watch it after the fact, and ooh, that was cringy how I said the cringy thing. But it's live where you're like, oh my God, the feedback is immediate. And if you can get to a point where you can get through it, well, you sure as shit are going to be able to do it when you don't have to look at yourself.
Yeah, that's good feedback, especially for people starting out. The one
Right.
thing I'll say is as you get comfortable, I want you to think about the last conversation you had with a friend or a family member or somebody that you know. Like, oh, Zach, you and I, we're friends. Before we went live, we
Yeah.
were talking about life and stuff. And you want to know something? I pretty much can guarantee you did not prepare a script for our conversation prior to going live.
I didn't even really for this one.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Live. I had some stuff written down, but I knew that we would be able to.
Because we're comfortable with each other and we're comfortable with the subject matter, right? So like sometimes people in sales overthink the words that must come out of my face. When the reality is the words are secondary to the connection. It does not matter what you say. And I know it's like, oh, well, I can just go ramble off expletives and, say racist stuff and whatever. It's like, no, don't hear what I'm not saying. What I am saying is that when you become so in tune with your vision and mission, and you believe so fully the value of what you bring to the table, you don't need to rehearse the words that come out of your mouth, and you don't need to rehearse the questions that you might ask. It's like if you were walking down a street at like 2 a.m. and you saw a house on fire, right? You saw that there's flames coming out of the upstairs window of this house, and you see there's playground equipment in the yard and bicycles and stuff and a minivan in the driveway. You're like, holy shit, they probably don't know their house is on fire. Do you need a script to go up and knock on that door and purvey some very important information?
Right.
Do you need to say that into a mirror before you go do that?
No,
but this is not the same. This is like an unnatural exercise for a lot of people to pick up the phone. But I want you to start thinking of yourself in that mindset that like, you're a subject matter expert, you're a professional, or you're not. If you know why it's relevant, if you know what's valuable, it shouldn't be hard to articulate. And if you don't know how to articulate, then everything else is just practice. And if you need a mirror, do that.
That's exactly right. And I think that's one. I think your point right there. It's tremendous. If you don't feel like an expert, then you are still developing. And you should know, I will be better at sales when I'm an expert at selling the damn thing that I'm selling. There's the sales practice, that you're describing, of having the authentic conversation, having good follow-up, making those connections. And then there's what will make you feel comfortable, which is actually being an expert in the product. To take it all the way back full circle to where we started, when you sold your first DVR, it went well, but then when you had a situation where you didn't know what you were talking about and somebody on the other side of the phone did, then it was uncomfortable. And you had to kind of fall over those stumbling blocks to get to the point where you were an expert and an expert in sales. And man, I'm glad that you came on and shared your expertise with us and got to make some great points with us for us. And tell people a little bit more about how they can engage with you or learn more about you and your organizations. I know there's some stuff that you may or may not be able to talk about yet, but
yeah. So the brand ChannelFalcon will be changing in the near future, and I can't tell you yet what, and I can't tell you exactly when, though I'm pretty sure I know all of those answers, but I can't say them yet. But ChannelFalcon, the spirit of what we do is going to remain the same. And we're cyber matchmakers. And effectively what that means is we help businesses identify strategic partners for IT, cybersecurity, or compliance. We match you with the provider that you need. If you are a provider, we help your business grow. And that's the too long don't read version. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can go to channelfalcon.com. You find my face there, unfortunately. Or just Johnathan, as you see it spelled here, at Johnathan at channelfalcon.com. Don't be shy. Reach out. I'm pretty responsive. Happy to be helpful however I can.
Fantastic. On my side, Tri-Unity Strategies. If you haven't checked out our events calendar, that's where you can see free and cheap workshops, fitness events, live podcasts that you can join, ask questions, and some other awesome things that we have going on. If you're somebody that's like, I have career and our business strategy questions, but I want to just do it as simply as possible, we do Twitch streams where you can come in and ask questions, and that's something new that we've started. So lots of ways to engage. Check out the events calendar. Continue to enjoy our content. John, thank you so much. And off the top of my head, I don't remember next week, but join us next week, and it's going to be freaking awesome. Thanks, everybody, and have a good weekend.
Be well.